our guests today are Mr. and Mrs. LeRoy Spargur of Shenandoah, or as we know them, Spike and Elaine. And they both grew up in this area and have excellent memories, so I know that we'll have a real good thing. The first, you understand that what we're talking about here is during the Depression and how the Depression affected your lives when you were kids in school and before school and so forth. So let's start with, what did your parents do to earn money to raise you? What'd you do? Your dad?
My father worked at the recreation billiard parlor, and I was fortunate. Mother worked part-time at one of the seed houses, I forget which one, and also did some seamstress work in the house, at home for people. And we were fortunate to have, we lived with my grandparents. And so we really, I really don't have any sad times to comment about. We were very lucky to have two people making some money, and very economical ladies looking after the money that was made.
Which helps too.
So that's about the extent of it. As far as my grandfather worked at grocery stores. He come up here to work for Kemp's General Store, which is in the middle of the 600 block on the north side of the street from Westboro, Missouri. And then he also worked at 3 or 4 different grocery stores, my grandfather did. And for Glenn Leacox. And they had a grocery store on the alley on Elm Street, just behind the old Spurgeon store across the alley. And he also worked for John Raymer down at KFNF, the KFNF building at their grocery store.
That's right.
And
that's right. They
so
did when I came
that's
here.
right. And so, as I said, we were very fortunate having 2 incomes and at our home.
Well, that you were, and most of us can't say that. How about you, Elaine? Your work?
My mother was a single mother, and she worked part-time at a grocery store in Riverton. Other than that, she went with Dr. Baldwin to deliver babies, and they would stay 10 days. They kept them in bed 10 days in that.
Sure.
Yeah. And so she'd stay, and then I spent most of my life with my grandpa and grandma. I mean, they I would live with them. And my mother supported my grandpa and grandma and me. And my grandpa helped a man who butchered, so therefore we had meat. And it was pretty rough times, really. But you could buy a box of Jell-O for 5 cents. And you could buy a 50-cent piece of beef to make a Sunday dinner. 50-cent piece of beef, and you put potatoes with it. And my grandpa had a big garden. And we had fruit trees, peach trees, all around one area. And you managed. And
did you have chickens?
Well, yeah, my grandma raised chickens. We had eggs. And then when it came to giving money to the church, we were a very religious family. We went to the Christian church. But rather than give him money, my grandma gave him canned stuff. You know, we had it in jars, and we'd can it without sugar because you couldn't afford to get the sugar right then. So when you used it, then you put the sugar in.
When you opened up.
And I did well in school, and I had a music teacher who had a sister in Omaha, and I wore, if there was something special, I was well dressed, but this girl in Omaha wore her clothes, and because I was in a lot of things, dramatics and.
Let's see. You said they had chickens. They had cow.
No cow. Yeah, no, we had to buy milk.
A big garden.
A big garden.
Yeah.
There were about a quarter of a block, and one section was potatoes and that, and then this over here was garden and grandma's flowers. In the middle was the house. The middle section.
Okay. Very good. Now, how about school? What's your best memories of that, and what was your best thing that you studied?
Best studies?
Yeah, which one? What your favorites?
My favorite studies was probably math. Not that I was a whirlwind in it, but nevertheless fairly good at it. And always enjoyed sports. We had played 3 years of basketball and substituted some in football, but 2 full years of football and track. And but I liked all studies. I enjoyed school. Had a lot of good teachers. Very good teachers.
How long were terms? 9 months, like now?
Yes, 9 months. Then after I qualified for the Air Force Reserve program to go to college, and so the last semester of high school I went to University of Nebraska to a college course out there.
Good.
But being 17 years old, I thought I was probably smarter than they were, so I didn't like marching to and from class. So, not to take advantage of a very good situation, I decided that was too much for me. I was going to drop out and come back home, since I already knew more than they did. And I experienced a lot of great things over there in Nebraska because one of our mentors was a fellow by the name of Ed Weir, who was an All-American tackle at the University of Nebraska, and also the track coach over there. And so we did get to compete a little bit over there in the track and basketball. That while I was there, I come back, and after I was out of service, why, Elaine thought it was a good idea, since we were married, she could probably take care of our funds as far as food and everything goes. So I ended up going to Tarkio College under the GI Bill. And so I graduated from college for 3.5 years and graduated from Tarkio College. So.
Okay, Elaine, now, but yours.
Well, I would like to have gone to college. I would like to have taught literature and grammar, but I couldn't afford to.
What grade school and high school? Where is this? In Riverton?
In Riverton. I went to school at it was a consolidated school in Riverton.
Oh, what?
But I couldn't go on to college, and I got married.
Well, I guess that's a good second choice.
Well,
maybe.
I don't know. I am not sure about that.
Let's see. So you went to school in Riverton.
Right.
That was a
and
consolidated.
I was real active in music. I was in everything that there is.
Good. So you didn't have to ride a school bus or be taken or anything like that?
No. It was too bad that didn't get to go on to
I
school.
know, and that's one of those things when you're
In a lot
growing
of
up in
ways.
the you're growing up in the middle of a depression.
Man,
You
yes,
cut so.
I'll say.
How about clothing? What'd you wear?
Well, you couldn't wear slacks to school, and I walked 10 blocks to
Uh-huh.
school, but you could not wear slacks. It was a no-no. And of course, in the wintertime, I wore long underwear. I had to, and
Of course.
my mom tried to fold them so my legs wouldn't be knobby. But and we had a heating stove, and you dressed behind the heating stove.
Sure.
Oh, it's cold.
Oh, sure. How about your clothing back in those years? Overalls?
I wore a lot of overalls, and I was probably more comfortable in overalls than anything else.
I know.
But here again, probably 75% of my shirts were made by my mother. She brought broadcloth, and cut them out, and she made my brother and my shirts, and never had to worry about a button being off. They sewed them on. You know
They were there to stay.
Right, and I did. I was very fortunate to have two people that saw that the washing was done and done very well, and that. So I always had clean clothes. But if I had my pick, I probably put on dirty ones and went back out and got them dirtier.
But, that's what boys are supposed to do.
Right. I should. Well, even in these hard times, somehow or other, my mother must have saved up enough money for me to take piano lessons. And I took piano lessons. I think her name was June Lightfoot from Farragut.
Uh-huh.
And when I was probably about 12 years old, I played in a piano recital down at Farragut at the church down there. In nightly days. Can't you just see me playing the piano?
Well, how come I've never seen
They
you play
all-
the piano?
They all got up and
I
left
haven't
when I
either.
sat down to play.
You didn't either.
Thank goodness. So anyway, that's
Well, okay, speaking of that, what particular games did you play or like to play?
Oh, I played basketball,
Uh-huh.
but mostly music. I never was much. Well, I played softball, but not. I didn't go all out for that. I like more music and drama and speech.
Mm-hmm.
I went a long ways in speech and humorous selections especially.
Hmm?
And I love to sing. I sang in everything that there was.
That reminds me, didn't you tell me once that your uncles and your mother
Yeah.
played, and
Oh,
so
right.
and
I had 4 uncles who played instruments, and they played for dances.
yes,
Went for dances, and I would get to go along.
I was going to say you got to go.
Yeah, and then one night I had to go to the bathroom, and I got up and fell on a marble dresser, and they had to stop and take me to town. I have a scar here, over here, and had my head sewed up. That was my last dance.
Yeah. That was
I
the
didn't get to go
last
anymore.
dance. How about the weather back then?
Oh,
You remember?
cold.
Cold winters and hot
Uh-huh.
summers.
We lived out like at the edge of town, and there was a road to the country, and this is when I was a senior. And my mom took care of a man who had a stroke, and this was his house. And you know where it was. Okay, we lived out the edge, and cars I don't know how they got to the country, but they had to. But it was awful. You could walk on top of the fence posts, and there was no school for a month at the Riverton School. whether they couldn't get coal or the coal truck couldn't get to the school or what, but we didn't, and we never had to make that up. We
I'm
never
just
made-
going to ask you if you had to go to school
no,
in summer.
we never
then.
made it up.
I
But
would
they
like
just
to-
they just closed the school.
I would like to add, and you folks do know my mother's 102 now, but in the last 2 or 3 years, I've told my mother that you must have tried to be pretty mean to me because I carried the Omaha Bee News during the winter and summers of 1936. And the temperature was 14 below and
You're
20
a short, fat
below,
boy.
and you could barely see the tops of the cars because of the snow drifts. And I'd tell her now, you must not have liked me very much, you know, because you may. There I was 8.5
Threw
years
you out
old,
into the cold.
8.5 years old, and I was carrying the Omaha Bee News. Well, I don't think anybody today would let their kids out at 8.5 years old to go carry papers, and we also collected for the papers at that time. But I had very good people on my paper route, and one particularly lady was Mrs. Dell Browning over on Monroe Street. And hardly ever did I ever come to their door that she wasn't there to take me inside, take my coat off of me in this winter time, and give me some chocolate, hot chocolate or something like that, and then bundle me back up and send me down the road, you know, to complete my route. So I can remember in the summer, why it was 100 plus, as you've heard on the radio recently.
yeah.
And but when you're young, I still made it to the big swimming pool down at the fairgrounds every day because I could run fast enough and jump the sidewalks where it was hot, you know, and make it down there. It wasn't too hot to go down there and go swimming.
Could I interrupt for a moment here? We found out, and I had never heard of it, that there was a missionary home on East,
Thomas,
right,
up at the top of East Thomas.
right there outside the cemetery now.
Fact is, it
How
was
do you know about it?
well, a sister of Norm Kling's lived up there and was I don't know. I think she was married. She might have been married to one of them, but the two Carlson boys owned that, and it was a big. I mean, later it was a missionary home and then a rooming house up there, but.
Was it a wood
It was a
construction, or-
big, long wooden structure, really.
But you don't know anything about it when it was a missionary home?
No, I don't really know, but I remember it had it, you know, they did have it up there, and, so it was,
And we'd never
it-
heard of that. It was Norm who was telling us about it.
it was up,
so
it was up there when I was up there, that's where I carried papers.
That's why I asked you.
And
about
it was, happened to be all open to the north at that time, so when the wind come across there, why, when you were standing up on the sidewalk, you couldn't see the tops of the cars going through there. But you have to realize I was a little shorter then, even though I was tall for my age at that time, I was a little shorter, so all the snow was a lot deeper than what you can imagine.
Thank you.
Did you think or talk about or realize that we were in a depression?
No.
That things were going.
It didn't.
It was just the way you lived,
You
and-
just went ahead. You lived from day to day. And of course, the country, most of our school was consolidated. The country people were better off. They were better off than we were. But I was one of the poorest ones in the class. There were others as poor as I was.
I said,
You know. But my mother says she does know how I can stand to eat macaroni and tomatoes, and I love them. I love macaroni and tomatoes. And she said, we just ate garden stuff, so it was awful. My mother said and macaroni was cheap. And
I could second what Elaine's saying there, because
I love that.
we were very fortunate. I said, but we had two people help make the living,
and my mom was making the living. My grandpa didn't make much money.
and well, as I said, there were two of them making a living, and we had very efficient. They took care of. They did a lot of baking and canning and
Oh, yeah, oh, goodness.
everything. And it
Oh,
was,
my,
yeah.
you put it in cans. And,
Well, and everybody seems to feel the same way, that it wasn't much of a change because nobody was rich that
no,
you knew.
absolutely not. But
And
you went
so
to church,
having,
I mean,
having
you
a
went to, I don't
depression.
know how they kept the church going, really.
Uh-huh.
You know, because,
I wrote down here that one of those old saying, where those old saying goes, you know, I didn't know I was poor because everybody I knew was poor,
yeah,
you
that's
know.
exactly
you didn't
right.
think about that. It didn't,
And
hurt me. It didn't hurt my pride one bit. I just went right ahead.
How about Christmas? What'd you get for Christmas and what'd you do?
My mom gave me $10,
Hey,
and
that-
I would buy my grandpa something and my mom, and there wasn't much left. I bought for my grandpa and grandma and my mother $10.
Living up here in the city, why, of course, you've heard it by anybody that talked about it, why, big event was put on by the Elks
And
Club.
they didn't have a tree.
The Elks Club put on every Christmas, why, you got an orange or an apple or a box
Right,
of cookies
right.
and candy, and I've been in a line that went from the Elks Club over on the corner of Elm and Thomas clear back up to the Armory
Is
at
that
Christmas
right?
time. That's right. You know, it was a big, you know, it was a big event, and very,
You
boy,
got
I
an
tell
orange,
you, you
but
have
that was
to,
the only
hey,
orange
listen,
you got the whole
that's
year.
probably the only one we had over
Well,
here. I was going back again. My grandfather worked at a grocery store, see, so
Oh.
sometimes we probably were lucky to have some. He wouldn't have ripped open a bag, you know, to have some to throw away. But had I been working there, well, I would have, you know. So we would have got some cast-offs.
How about your birthday? Did you, that mean anything to you or
Not
just another day?
Not very much.
Didn't really get a lot. No, right. I would,
I was glad to get older so I could go with the boys.
see
I
there.
mean, but
You finally get the truth, see. You know. And one of the important things about Elaine is you don't want to forget now that she was Miss Riverton in 1936.
Oh,
You
that's
know.
right. That's
Yeah,
right.
I rode in the parade down there a year ago. They wanted me to this year, but I had that sciatic hip and I couldn't see you getting on with the K.
We have
Yeah, I was Miss Riverton.
of the four that we know about, why there's only one that's passed away. It was up at Essex, but this is Eloise, not Eloise,
What are you talking about?
Reed.
Oh,
She
Marybelle.
was Miss
Marybelle
Marybelle was
was-
Miss Shenandoah.
That's how I know how Mary Bell is
Yeah.
because you had to be a senior
She was-
to qualify. And
She was Miss
in it,
Shenandoah.
up at Shenandoah. And she wasn't picked, and she wasn't happy.
But
But the
Irene
girl around
Irene
it,
Bright
Barnaby
Irene
Sullivan
Bright was Miss
and Reynolds, and I
Farragut.
wanted her to get it. She's dead now.
The one Irene you know here in
Practically.
town.
All those
She was a
people.
lawman, and she was Miss Farragut.
Oh. Well,
And I can't think of what was her name up there, Lucille Winstrand.
Yeah.
At Essex was Miss
Irene,
Essex.
Irene,
I said Bright, Irene
Yeah,
Lawman.
yeah.
She was Miss Farragut.
Yeah.
So,
I
and
tell
Lucille's
you,
passed away, but nevertheless, that was
well, I
during the
think some of
Depression
the
years.
things
See, so that was a highlight for those gals.
Spike has enjoyed me telling about this, about when I came back here in 1941 with a little boy, 3.5 years old, looking for a job, and I went to work at the drugstore keeping books, and I loved it there. My first job I ever had, and it was during the when things were cigarettes.
Ration.
you
Everything
know,
was rationed.
and nylon hose. Well, Harry Simpson,
No.
Harry,
Okay, Harry Simpson. Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
what did
I
you
don't want
say,
to interrupt you.
Simpson? No, Harry
Rogers.
Rogers
Yeah.
that ran Spurgeon's had
Oh,
nylon
sure.
hose, and so we made a deal. He smoked like crazy, we'd save cigarettes for him at the store if he'd saved nylon. We couldn't
And the gals
stand
got
in line,
nylons.
and Harry saved nylons. I think that's real
Fair's
funny.
fair, yeah.
Black market went on no matter where you were at.
Right,
Depends on what you
right.
wanted
Very
and what you
nice
needed.
cigarettes.
But looking back then, as I understand it from what you said, the fact that the country was in bad times really didn't hit you because that's all, I know it in my case, that's all I knew. I didn't have anything to compare it with.
Oh yeah, and my friends, most of my friends didn't have much money either. You know, you don't talk about that. You just, even my mother said that I never complained, ever complained, that I didn't have this, I didn't have. I don't know why I didn't. I knew I didn't have them, but I just didn't care, I guess.
Well, you
I went on.
wasn't going to do you any good to complain.
I got along all right. I got along all right.
In my life, Dr. Gotch was always very important in my life because the Gotches lived across the street from us up on University Street before they moved into their big house down on West Street. So Mother and all of us got acquainted with the Gotches, Clara Jane, and all of them when they lived across there. I was too small to know them at that time, but nevertheless, later on, well, Dr. Gotch did a lot for the Spargur family,
Ah,
you know, at a very low price, you know.
okay.
Very
Well-
much appreciated, you know.
Well, I was going to tell you, my mother went with Dr. Baldwin, and first they went horse and buggy before they had car to drive, and they'd go out in the country where people have one baby after another, and they'd run out of names, and the doctor would say, Doc, you and Tiny, that was my mom, you name this one. And he named them all. If it was a girl, it was Mary, and Mom named them Elaine. My mother told you if you ever meet a girl and her name Mary Elaine, you'll know that I didn't do that. There's a lot of, funny things.
It was probably more a necessity at that time when they talk about midwives. Today you can read the papers and they're talking about, it's too much of a chance why, I don't remember Elaine ever saying that they ever lost anybody, her and her, the doctor and her mother, but they probably did, but nevertheless, why everybody was born and, went on very healthy. Because they knew what to do and how to do it.
The thing probably that impressed me the most is my grandma was a very religious woman, and she quoted Bible to me all the time about things. And it really impressed me in my life. I remember how religious, and my grandma had it was hard to, a bunch of kids, she had 10 children. But that's the way life is. I learned a lot from my grandma, things she'd say. Take a little from a little and leave a little, she'd say that to me. And really,
I've heard that before.
have you heard that?
Yes.
Yeah. And those kind of things, you grow up that way. It was a good life.
Well, anything else that we ought to remember about the days?
I would just, a lot of people don't know about it, but during my early life going to Sunday school and church, I had the occasion, my Sunday school teacher got tickets for us to go see Creighton play football at the Creighton Stadium in Omaha, which nobody knows ever existed probably. And it was probably, if I was guessing, probably in 1939. And also we went to Lincoln to see Iowa and Nebraska play over there, and we sat in what they call the knothole section, and I forget, I don't want to stretch it, but it wasn't over 50 cents, and it might have been a quarter at that time down to the northeast corner of the stadium, and that before they were filling the stadium, naturally, but so I had a very fortunate, good time, so it was a lot of good things happened even during those poor times.
I know. And as you guys said earlier, we didn't know.
No,
We
that's
didn't know.
right. Everybody else was, you know it?
Sure.
It was,
My purse. I have a picture.
I don't know whether you brought it in, did you?
Yeah, I don't think you did, Elaine.
It must be in the car.
Oh, did I? Oh, shoot.
I
I had a
could go.
picture I was gonna show you. We have two little great-grandsons, and I put their picture in my purse.
Well,
Mr. Bill will want to see them.
Yeah, I should have brought them in.
I think I have one more question too. Well, maybe.
Okay.
I have another question. And I don't think anybody's said this, but Shenandoah school kids had an extra class every week, did they not, when they left the school buildings? Bible school?
We always had Thursday Bible school.
Yeah.
They did?
Oh, yeah, we had
Every
every,
week,
yeah,
Yeah.
every week. I think it was
Well,
every, I
Raymond
think every
didn't have
week. I
that.
think it was every week.
And you would go to the,
Could have been down to church or, it could have been just once a month, but I think it was
Well,
almost
Sky,
every day.
did Raymond have that?
I don't think so.
No.
isn't that a big difference
Yeah.
than
You
now?
know, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Mhm. You went to the church of your choice, or I think one of our other interviewees mentioned that he didn't really attend church, and so that was his education and.
There was always summer Bible school. I went to summer Bible school at probably Emmanuel Lutheran. It was on the corner of Thomas and South Broad. And a lady by the name of Luella Moline, who was a daughter to our local, what do you call them, haberdashery, made suits.
mhm.
Mr. Moline was a
Taylor.
made, huh?
No, you better.
And was actually at the back of the old Spurgeon building.
Mhm.
There was two stores up there, and I think he was on the left side, and where Long Street started with Ben Brower and the insurance business on the south side, and this Moline was on the left side. But this was back during the 30s.
And now it's
So-
gonna be gone.
Yeah, right.
Well, I think we've about run out of time. Excuse me.
Well, this has been interesting.
We appreciate
Well,
it,
you
yeah.
guys have brought up a lot of things that some of the others haven't.
Well, some of the things, to me, that with my bringing up, the church had so much to do. I didn't have any place else to go. I went to church. You went to church and Sunday school, and then in Christian Endeavor,
Yes.
and it instills in you the real true. You know, maybe that's what brought me through, and
There
I
you
didn't
go.
think about being poor. You know, you don't you just go ahead and go.
Mhm.
And it was very. I still feel the same way about it. You know, with Raymond, he was singing in two choirs. I started him in church, I think, when he was little, and that's just the way it is. I know a lot of people who they say their children don't go to church when they grow up, but mine does.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Our pleasure,
This is gonna be a good one, just like the one we had before today.
our pleasure.
And these are always fun.
I might add, I thought maybe that the Depression was still on in 1948 when I married Elaine, you know. Here's a lady that had a 10-year-old son, and I was just 20 years old, and so we started out life together, and then we've made it for 61 plus years.
Looks like it's taken then.
We're still in the Depression.
I tell ya.
Never got enough money together to get out of town.
I couldn't get out of town.
I know. Isn't that funny?
He's cute.
I was back in
They
church
say
with
that after you
her
live
mother.
together a long time, you pick up each other's problems, and well, my eyes just been watering something terrible, and that's the way he is for her. I thought that from him.
Your fault, huh?
Yeah,
Most things are. Oh,
I know.
Well, you did great.
we've been very fortunate, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Very, very fortunate.
Well, you did
Made a
it.
lot of,
You did
made
it
a lot of good friends and
right here in Shenandoah. all
around
the time.
here, right? Yeah.
And didn't your mother tell me that they moved in that house when she was married, and it's the only house she's ever
No.
lived in since.
She moved in there when she was 12 years
12 years
old.
old.
Oh, and was still living
In
there.
1919, her father bought that house when they come up from Westboro, and it was one of two homes that Western Normal had. One was for men and one was for women, and so when her and Dad got married, why, they lived about a year and a half out of that house, and during the 20s, during probably even more so Depression years, why, they moved back in with her folks. And
I
so
think
we lived with
that's-
my grandparents all those years,
I
and
see.
I used to take, there's a lot of people here locally that lived in that house. Ladies used to come in from the country and stay all week. One time, Esther Miller, Fishball, Williams,
Who else?
and Elaine Blackburn. She
Yeah,
lived, I
Elaine
forget what her maiden name was. They both had the upstairs bedroom in that house where Mother still lives.
Well, I'll be darned.
While they went to school, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
they
they
went,
did.
and they stayed all, you know, a lot of the farm boys, maybe one guy had a car and they brought in 4 or 5 guys and they rode back and forth, but the gals didn't have cars, so they'd come to town and stay all week. Margaret Chambers, she was a Racine, why, she stayed there
stayed there.
during that time, and, but they fed some of the teachers at Mother's house, see,
That'd be
years ago.
handy.
Well, they did. They'd,
Yeah.
there was a number of the teachers that ate there also.
I had 2 friends. I still have one of them. Crystal is gone. Crystal Comstock. She died with cancer. But the 3 of us, Hilda Bright, Hilda Peterson, and I, we all went to school together. And we were together in California. And we were talking about which one of us was the most poor. And we couldn't, and we never decided who was the most poor. I mean, but we were happy, and you excel. Whatever you do, you excel at it. You just go like crazy, you know, singing or speaking or anything. And it just, I don't know.
Have to take advantage of the
I never
situation.
missed a thing.
Exactly.